Worst of all, they seemed like normies. They weren't like glue-sniffing ups with foot-high Liberty spikes and a needle stuck in their arm and a dog on a string, passed out spare changing in front of Gilman. What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock NBA, and today we are back with another installment of one of my favorite series, Most Hated Bands. This is where I look at bands that, as you might guess, people hate, and most importantly, I try to understand why, because I think anytime people feel this strongly about anything, positively or negatively, there's something that we can learn from like a marketing and consumer psychology perspective. So today we will be looking at three artists: Creed, Taylor Swift, and BLINK-182. But before I get into that, first I wanted to mention my email newsletter. You can sign up for that at the link in the description. And also I want to thank Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. If you love epic dark fantasy, and who doesn't, then you should check out Raid Shadow Legends. It's a free-to-play, turn-based RPG with noble kings, dark wizards, prophecies, betrayals, and all the other stuff that you expect from the genre. And if you want to download Raid yourself for desktop or mobile, you can do that right now. Just use my links in the description. Raid has over 16 different factions, such as orcs, dwarves, undead hordes, and more. Personally, I like dark elves the most. They're like the edgy emo version of regular elves. My personal favorite champion is Hexweaver. She's a magic user. What I like most about the game is geeking out on all the gear. Every champion has multiple artifact slots, and every artifact can be upgraded in all kinds of different ways. And Raid is about to release a huge champion update, tweaking and rebalancing over 20 different champions to make PvP arena battles even more competitive. And if that's not enough, the Forge is coming up too. So now you could save time and start crafting top quality artifacts and competing right away. So if that sounds cool to you, then just go to the video description, click on the special links, and if you are a new player, you will get 100,000 silver and 1 energy refill, plus 10 mystery shards and 1 free champion called Slasher. And one thing to note, this is only available to new players for the next 30 days, so don't miss out. And all this treasure will be waiting for you right here. So good luck, and I'll see you there. If that sounds familiar to you, then you have probably heard the first band we're going to talk about today, Creed. The band who arguably put that style on the map, the Yarling thing. And for anybody who may not be familiar, Creed was one of the biggest selling bands of the 90s and early 2000s, or really biggest selling artists of any genre, period. They sold over 50 million records, even though they only put out 3 albums. And although obviously a lot of people liked them, somebody was buying those records, they were easily one of the very most hated bands in that whole era of rock, if not maybe the most hated. Kind of like Nickelback before Nickelback. And why did so many people hate them? Well, I think it's actually a little bit deeper than it may seem. It's like peeling back the layers of a butt rock onion. At the surface, the first layer of the butt rock onion, the reason that a lot of people hated them is because of their music, because it was kind of this corny, contrived version of grunge. Because remember, their first album came out in 1997, which was only a couple years after the peak of grunge. And that album was arguably the beginning of the whole post-grunge scene. Puddle of Mud and Stained, 3 Days Grace, all that stuff. The white guy with greasy long hair yarling about his feelings. And I think what rubbed a lot of people the wrong way about Creed's music is that probably the single defining characteristic of grunge was that it felt so authentic. You listen to Alice in Chains or Nirvana and like there is real pain there. And by comparison, Creed just kind of felt a little contrived and fake. And I hate using that word because it sounds so shitty and gatekeepy. They just kind of come off as like jocks trying to play grunge or something. And to be clear, I'm not saying that that's accurate or fair. The guys in the band actually seem like really cool people. I'm just saying that's how it came across at the time. And because grunge had that deep emotional connection with so many people, they reacted very strongly to what felt like a bunch of outsiders trying to fake it. A lot of people said Scott Stapp was like the bootleg fake Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, and I don't disagree with that. And you can make the case that Creed was the beginning of the Yarling thing that took over rock for the next few years. What were we thinking? Like, who thought that sounded good? It literally sounds like a joke, like some SNL skit. In peeling back the next layer of the Creed onion, I think another factor is that they were a Christian band. Or at least their singer Scott Stapp was Christian and wrote lyrics that seemed like Christian lyrics, so they were perceived as a Christian band, which I personally have no problem with at all, even though, as I've talked about before, I am an atheist. But being a Christian was definitely not cool in the eyes of the scene at that time, and certainly didn't fit in with like the OG grunge bands, who I don't know that they were like aggressively atheist or anything like that, but it's pretty hard to imagine Kurt Cobain being like stoked on a Christian hard rock band. Now, I have to say, I do think it's kind of ignorant and hypocritical of the fans and the media to hold their religion against them. I mean, imagine if Creed was like, say, a Jewish or Muslim band, and they said those things. It would sound terrible. But for whatever reason, it's always kind of been okay to bash Christians and rock, and so that was just another mark against Creed. And it definitely didn't help that Scott Stapp had what seemed to be a little bit of a, like, Christ Messiah complex himself. He had like the Jesus hair. He would always do stuff in their videos like standing on top of a mountain with his hands out like he's Jesus on the cross, which is odd because that kind of narcissism is like the exact opposite of Christ-like behavior. And that brings us to the last layer of the Creed onion, Scott Stapp himself. To be blunt, it seemed like the guy acted like a total douche at best and like an unbearable, abusive asshole at worst. In addition to the Christ complex stuff, he said some incredibly obnoxious shit in interviews, such as, "Hey, Dave Grohl, you got a long." He also ruined a bunch of shows by getting so wasted that he just like fell down on stage and couldn't remember the lyrics, couldn't finish the show. And he was apparently in a sex tape with Kid Rock, of all people. Unfortunately, I was not able to find a recording of this, but here's a description, which I kind of love. The tape in question involves the two partying, getting completely drunk, and having their groupies performing oral sex on them. The only other thing that is known about the tape is that at some point, Scott Stapp utters the phrase, "It's good to be the king."
People saying to me like, we weren't surprised that you had some tape, that was taped at a concert after and there was girls involved, but what the hell were you doing hanging out with Scott Stapp?
He also put out this super cringy Miami Marlins theme song that's so awful that I just kind of love it. Let's play ball, it's game day. We want take me out to a bar game. And there's more. Basically, he just seemed like a completely unbearable guy. Here is how their guitarist Mark Tremonti put it. There are a few people who get so crazy when they party that they have a nickname for their alter ego. With Scott, it was Rick. I don't know where the name came from, but it would be like, uh-oh, here comes Rick. Word got out about Scott acting like that, and I think it made a lot of people kind of rightfully dislike the band. But that said, a couple years later, he did these Facebook Lives that I think made it apparent that the reason he acted that way is that he was somebody who was struggling with some very serious addiction and mental health problems.
Because there's been a couple weeks where I had to sleep in my truck. I had no money, not even for gas or food.
And he said all this crazy delusional stuff about like ISIS and these conspiracies and stuff, which he blamed on being on an Adderall binge. Personally, I think it was probably meth, but whatever. As soon as he said that, I was like, yep, that's what's going on here. It instantly made sense to me because I remember being up for 4 days on an Adderall binge to the point where I was like seeing the shadow people, and I actually hallucinated that there was some like army officer in my room who was about to kill me. So I think that kind of softened people's perception of him a little bit. He's since gotten clean, dealt with his underlying diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and he seems to be in a pretty good place now, which makes me happy to see. Now, don't get me wrong, the fact that he was going through all that stuff does not excuse his behavior. But I do think this is a good reminder to keep that in mind if you ever see somebody who's acting like that. Because there's a very good chance that they are deep in some addiction or mental health stuff and they could really use some help. And next up, BLINK-182. Back in 1999 or so, when it was still socially acceptable to use gay as an insult, there was perhaps no other word that was more frequently used to describe Blink. And that may be hard to believe because these days they're pretty much universally respected, as they should be. They're my personal top favorite bands of all time, which, just for the record, I think would be Blink, Hatebreed, Youth of Today, A Day to Remember, and Pantera. So it may be hard to believe, but it's true. And although, like I said, I absolutely love Blink, I do kind of understand why people hated them. Because they were kind of the death of real punk in the mainstream. And let me explain what I mean by that. Although the previous generation of bands got a lot of shit for selling out, I think that they were more or less real punk bands. Green Day, for example, being the biggest, they got a lot of shit, but nobody could really deny their credibility. Like I talked about in my Green Day video that came up in the 80s and 90s, Gilman Street DIY scene, and I remember them playing with bands like Crimp Shrine and Sticky and Neurosis. They were the real deal. And The Offspring maybe weren't quite as legit as Green Day in terms of their DIY cred, but they were on Epitaph. I mean, they were label mates with Total Chaos and the Vandals. That's pretty punk. And then there's Rancid, and if you doubt Rancid's punk cred, well, I don't know what to tell you. Although, make no mistake, people hated them too. But then there was Blink, who really weren't part of the DIY punk scene at all. I mean, I know they played a few shows here and there, but they pretty much signed to a major right away as soon as they could, and they got the whole MTV mainstream push and all that. Playing Warped Tour was about as punk as they got.
I'm punk, a beer, tattoos. Hang on, maybe are you gonna go break some glass or something?
And to be clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. I love them, but they weren't really a real punk band. And on top of that, worst of all, they seemed like normies. They weren't like glue-sniffing fuck-ups with foot-high Liberty spikes and a needle stuck in their arm and a dog on a string, passed out spare changing in front of Gilman. They were like good-looking, clean-cut, likable, well-adjusted kids from the suburbs of San Diego that seems like somebody your mom would like. Why don't you invite your friend Mark over more often? I like him. And that is definitely not punk. All of that explains why the real punks hated them, but of course it also explains why a major label would want to sign them as opposed to a band like, say, NoFX. I mean, Tom DeLonge was prom king at his high school. That is definitely not punk. And for a lot of people who got into punk because they felt like ugly, weird, fuck-up losers and outcasts, seeing the prom king play in a punk band felt like a slap in the face. Like, what the fuck, man? I came here to get away from people like this guy. I believe that kind of thinking is coming from a place of insecurity, and I don't think it's healthy, but I do totally understand why somebody would feel that way. I mean, I feel ugly all the time when I talk about all these beautiful people in bands like Ollie Sykes and Andy Biersack, and then I see myself while I'm editing the video, and I just want to like fucking smash the monitor because I hate the way I look. So I get it.
And the trick is, you just punch yourself in the nuts as hard as you possibly can.
And along the same lines, they were that generation's gateway band to alternative music in the same way as Green Day was before, or that Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance would be later. And people oftentimes resent those bands for similar reasons, for like letting new people into their exclusive little club or whatever. Again, kind of toxic thinking based on insecurity, but you see this happen with pretty much every gateway band in any genre, whether that's punk or rap or country. And I actually applaud Blink for not giving into that and letting these people convince them to hold themselves back. They took full advantage of the opportunity that they had to sign to a major label, to get all this mainstream media coverage and all that, and fucking good for them. They did all the MTV stuff like Spring Break and all that. They did cameos in big mainstream movies like American Pie. They were on the cover of every magazine. Travis Barker had a reality show. All of them started companies like Atticus and Macbeth and Famous Stars and Straps. You don't have to like any of that stuff, but you can't deny that they made the most of the opportunity that they had. And a lot of people wouldn't have. A lot of people would have been like, I don't know, like, do we really want to be on MTV? Like, do we want to be sponsored by this company? People are going to say that's corny. Maybe we shouldn't. Fuck that. It is not your job to hold yourself back in order to make some random hater happy. It's your job to do what makes you happy. So I'm glad Blink didn't let those people talk themselves out of it, and you shouldn't either. Anybody that tells you not to do something because it's corny or it's kind of selling out, bro, is not your friend. So fuck them.
Like a perfect night to dress up like hipsters.
And next up, Taylor Swift. In every generation of pop culture, there's like one or two people who kind of become the default target for any hate directed at mainstream culture. I call these people the shit umbrella, because every snarky hater in the comments section or in the media comes along and dumps a bucket of shit right on top of them. But like an umbrella, by absorbing all that shit, they kind of shelter all the smaller people underneath them. For example, when I was a kid, the shit umbrella was New Kids on the Block. And then in the late 90s, it was Britney Spears. If you wanted to show everyone how cool and not mainstream you were like, sorry, but I don't listen to that fake bullcrap on the radio like Britney Spears. And like, really? What does she ever do to anybody? And then later on, it was the boy bands like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, and then Justin Bieber. And then by the late 2010s, when Taylor Swift went from being the nice country girl with a guitar to being the most popular entertainer on the planet, whose songs are absolutely everywhere, from like the lobby when you're getting your oil changed at Jiffy Lube to the front page of Spotify, it was her turn to be the shit umbrella for a few years. People hated on her simply for being the face of mainstream music and mainstream pop culture, and for probably being a little bit overexposed. Like at a certain point, you just see someone's face so much that you're like, can you please just fuck off? Like when you have to share a room with your little brother and you hate him for just existing and like being around you all the time. And at first I think that was kind of unfair. She was just a sweet girl with a guitar who played these nice G-rated country songs about like how some boy she met at youth group didn't want to go to the movies with her or whatever. And what's so bad about that?
She wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts.
And then the moment when Kanye pulled a Kanye and cut her off at the VMAs.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Really made her a sympathetic figure for a minute. Like, why did that meanie Kanye do that to poor Taylor? And she was relieved of her shit umbrella duties for a minute. But then around the time that she went like full pop, I think people kind of realized, wow, every song that she writes is about herself and about how she's telling the haters off because she's so above the drama. Even though all of her songs are about drama, she actually seems kind of self-absorbed and annoying now that I think about it. And then there was the whole thing where Scooter Braun bought her masters or whatever, and she made a big deal about it and came off as kind of entitled. So I think that was kind of the moment where public opinion maybe turned against Taylor a little bit. But that said, even though I think the opinion about her in general had shifted a bit, she wasn't really the shit umbrella anymore because by that point, mumble rap existed. And people like Lil Pump and Lil Xan had moved into the role of shit umbrella.
This a warning shot to every motherfucking little one-hit wonder rap mumble brother.
Sorry, but I don't listen to Lil whoever.
These guys can't even rap.
Tupac didn't need face tattoos.
And now with her new album, and to believe that, I think requires a certain level of narcissism, a certain level of ego. And before you say it, yes, I would say the same thing applies to what I do, to being a YouTuber. You have to have enough of an ego to believe that you should sit in front of a camera and say what you think, and that there's hundreds of thousands or millions of people all over the world that will listen to you. But to do it on the level of people like Taylor Swift, I have to think requires a whole other level of that. I mean, look at Michael Jordan. He's known to be like a notorious asshole, but clearly that same kind of ego and competitive drive is a huge part of what enabled him to achieve what he did. Steve Jobs treated everybody like shit, achieved some amazing things, but he was a complete asshole that just used people as pawns to achieve his goals. Elon Musk, again, a very brilliant guy, but seems like a total douche whose personal life is a complete mess. My big question is, can you be Taylor Swift without being Taylor Swift? I kind of don't think so.
I think you need to have a shower now.
I agree, and I'm not offended that you said that. There's a lot going on, and none of it's good.
All right, my friends, that does it for this edition of Most Hated Bands. Let me know what you think in the comments, what artists you would like to see in future installments of this. Before I let you go, number one, sign up for the Punk Rock NBA newsletter if you want to get an email every week with links to whatever content I put out that week, videos, podcasts, and interviews I did. No ads, no spam. I will never sell or share your email address with anybody ever. There's a link to that in the description. And as always, I would like to thank everybody who supports us on Patreon, especially those of you who are generous enough to support at the true cult level or above. I am sincerely, genuinely grateful for your support. I never take it for granted for a single second, so thank you. Patrons get every podcast a week early. There's a members-only private Discord server that I'm in all the time. There's a chance to have me review your work, whether that's your music, your videos, your graphic design or photography portfolio, anything you want me to take a look at and give you feedback on, I'd be happy to do it. If you want to sign up for that, there's a link to that in the description. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.